biggest reason that I left the NHS is that feeling of leaving a badly staffed shift and knowing that minimum standards were not going to be met because, again, we were minimally staffed with the wrong bands of nurses, in as much as there wasn't experienced nurses there as I was leaving. And the guilt that stays with you was the biggest push factor, I would say.
You may remember Michaela Alsop, who we spoke to a number of times on the programme when she was a critical care nurse, and she's back with us this morning. Michaela, good morning.
Good morning.
I think let's start there. I've said you were a critical care nurse. You've left the NHS. What are you doing now?
I work in a school at the moment as a school nurse. It is a lovely job, really enjoying it.
That's amazing. And what has we need to remember what has prompted this? Just describe the conditions you were working in that led you to make this change.
I think after 2 years of working through the pandemic, through gruelling conditions, physically working on within red zones, looking after patients, going in the next day and finding a six-bedded bay. Two of the bay had died overnight. The resulting knocks to my mental health after seeing that sort of thing happen. And then there's all the kind of the not as immediate things, paying for parking when other professions don't pay for parking, the fact that you cannot get childcare other than family to look after children that covers a 12-hour shift. We work through holidays, we work over Christmas. It was always particularly hard on night shift. Nurses are awake all night, and we work through the night. We don't sleep. We're generally not on call through the night either. So it's the knock-on effect to your mental health, to your physical health. It's grueling work. It's really hard physical work, and I find myself at an age now where I am mentally and physically challenged when I'm going into work within a critical care environment. So there was a lot of things that led up to it, but I would say the biggest reason that I left the NHS is that feeling of leaving a badly staffed shift and knowing that minimum standards were not going to be met because, again, we were minimally staffed with the wrong bands of nurses, in as much as there wasn't experienced nurses there as I was leaving. And the guilt that stays with you was the biggest push factor, I would say.
Wow. May I ask, just on that note, then, in terms of making your decision, whether there is an element of guilt in walking away as well? How do you feel about that? And indeed, how did it go down with your colleagues when you announced you were going to be leaving?
I think as I was leaving the NHS, in an ITU, there tends to be about 150 members of staff, nursing staff, working, 2 12-hour shifts to cover a 24-hour shift, cover holidays and things like that. I would say there was at least 20% of the workforce at that time talking about moving into other roles away from critical care. So it was met with kind of sadness. I'm really sorry to have left this profession within the NHS, such a amazing establishment, but it was met with kind of, well, it's completely understandable. We understand why you're doing it. But, don't get me wrong, Callum, I am absolutely poised to come back to the NHS. If this gets sorted out, like many nurses that I talk to, if these pay conditions, which, have a massive knock-on effect to recruitment, if we can get this sorted out, if we just get the hope to know that things are going to get better, because there's a few things that could happen very quickly, I will be coming straight back to the NHS, like many other nurses that I talk to.
That is so fascinating to hear. So you're ready and raring to go should conditions improve. And
Oh, absolutely.
That's amazing to hear. Yeah.
Working within the NHS and having that connection with patients, seeing people get better is the best job in the world. None of that pushed me out. The politics didn't push me out. It is the conditions that the government have continued to maintain over the last 12 years.
Wow. It's really fascinating. And that is something we will bear in mind when we're speaking to politicians on this programme as well, actually, because that's such an important message. And just
Please do.
on that, Michaela, yeah, on that, I wonder what you make of Conservative MP Lee Anderson's comments, some of which we played to you there. His tweet as well that went mega viral yesterday and was really quite criticised. But you heard his defence of himself there, speaking about nurses and their use of food banks, etc. I wonder if you've got any insight for us on that in terms of the conditions, the pay issues that nurses are dealing with. Is that the reality that nurses are using food
Yeah,
banks?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, what a dreadful thing. This, nurses they've been to university. They're not trained in critical care for 18 months. When you're at university as a nurse, you get a minimal bursary of about, £200 a month or something. It is absolutely ridiculous. You cannot work because you're working full time as a nurse. You can't supplement your income in any way. You're working through university holidays. So for that gentleman to have such a misguided opinion of nurses, it just it smacks of the general opinion that the government have. That there are very many comments that have been made over these last few weeks where, obviously the Conservatives have no idea what nurses are doing. I've worked with people that have been referred to the nurse bank. I mean, sorry, not the nurse bank, the food bank. I mean, the mark of civilization is the healthcare that we provide to our society. And these people are being referred to the bank. It's disgraceful. And it smacks of, just a complete awareness of what society has become.
Michaela, it's really powerful what you're saying this morning. Just as a final concluding thought, then, since you left a couple of months ago and you've taken up your new job as a school nurse, how are you? How are you doing now?
Yeah, I'm fine. What can I say, Callum? The counselling has worked. There was one big trigger moment for me within the NHS where I left a badly staffed shift, and the patient hadn't come to any harm, but it was not well staffed, and that moment will stay with me forever. I have found a job that I am able to do well, and I am supported, and I am paid appropriately. Many other nurses can't do that, so the guilt remains. But this is a great job. I'm grateful, but I am ready to come back to the NHS when this is sorted out.
Michaela, it's been so good to keep in touch with you. We will continue to keep in touch with you if that's all right with you, because you are such an interesting and helpful example of what's going on. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.